So let's talk about competition, because it turns out that competition is a powerful influence on the sex steroid hormones, and the sex steroid hormones powerfully influence competition. So most people don't realize this, but most males of a given mammalian species never get to reproduce. In fact, they never even get to have sex at all. And we don't often think about that, but testosterone plays a powerful role in determining which members of a given species will get to reproduce, which ones of that species will actually get access to females. And so here I'm not talking about humans specifically, but it's well known in species like elephant seals, in species like antlered animals and rams, for instance, that the higher levels of testosterone correlate with access to females. Now, one interpretation of this is that the females are detecting which males have high testosterone and selecting them. They're more receptive to them. We're going to talk about receptivity for mating in a moment. But it's actually more so that the males that have higher testosterone forage further and will fight harder for the females. And this is really interesting because there's very good evidence now that testosterone can reduce anxiety, promote novelty seeking, and promote competitive interactions. And so before you leap too far with this in your mind and think about all these human behaviors, just stay with me because there's a little bit of biology here that makes it all make sense. And it turns out to be pretty simple. We have a brain region called the amygdala. In Latin, that just means almond. But the amygdala is most famous for its role in fear. We hear a lot about fear and the amygdala. But the amygdala is really involved in threat detection. It sets our thresholds for anxiety and what we consider scary or too much. Testosterone, secreted from the gonads and elsewhere in the body, binds to the amygdala and changes the threshold for stress. That testosterone has this incredible effect of making effort feel good. But what I was really referring to is the fact that testosterone lowers stress and anxiety, in particular in males of a given species. Now, this is important because we often think of testosterone as creating whatever, masculinization, or it's, virilization, or all these terms are thrown around. But what's it really doing when it comes to mate choice and competition? What it's doing is it's reducing the threshold for anxiety. And in doing so, it selects individuals of a given species to push further, being willing to, suffer more, although it also reduces pain, so maybe they also suffer less, in pursuit of reproduction in females. Now, it's well known in humans that both males and females who have elevated levels of testosterone will engage in more novelty seeking. And I do want to point out that even individuals without testes have testosterone, and peaks in testosterone have similar effects regardless of whether or not someone has ovaries or testes. Testosterone increases generally lead to more foraging, more novelty seeking, increases in libido, and increases in desire to mate. So it is the case that increases in testosterone promote competitive and foraging type behaviors in humans and in non-human mammals. But it's also true that competition itself can increase androgens such as testosterone. I want to repeat that. Competitive environments themselves can increase testosterone. Now, some people have come to the conclusion that if you win, your testosterone goes up, and if you lose, your testosterone goes down. And to some extent that's true, but that's not a direct effect on the gonads. That's actually mediated by the neuromodulator dopamine. We talked about dopamine in the episode on motivation and drive. And dopamine and testosterone have a remarkable interplay in the body. Dopamine is actually released in the brain in ways that has the pituitary, this gland that sits over the roof of your mouth, release certain hormones that then go on to promote the release of more testosterone. And indeed, winning promotes more dopamine and later more testosterone. However, in the short term, just competing increases testosterone independent of whether or not you win or lose. So the short version of this is that competition increases testosterone. And this may be an ancient mechanism whereby the androgens such as testosterone are feeding back to encourage more competitive type behaviors, because every species, whether or not you're talking about reproduction or other resource allocation, is involved in competition. Not every individual of a species gets access to the same number of mates or the same quality of mates. And this is true in both directions for males and females and everything in between.